All yours.
All right, well, we'll go ahead and get started. We are waiting for one or two more members to show up, but we'll just have them log their attendance when they arrive. Welcome everybody to the January 25th, 2022 meeting of the Philomath Inclusivity Committee. In attendance tonight is myself, Maeve Dempsey, co-chair, and we'll just go ahead and popcorn around and go ahead and introduce yourselves briefly.
Chaz Jones, Mayor.
Teresa Nielsen, City Councilor.
Cindy Conrad, she, they pronouns, committee member.
Are we the only ones left?
I also gone, but go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Gianna and Mike. Sitting on the couch eating an orange.
And I'm Christopher. I wish I was eating an orange.
And Chris Workman, City Manager.
Zena Allen.
All right, thank you, everyone.
And just Zena was really quiet there, so she did announce herself, just to make sure that someone got that.
All right, so I don't have any urgent business myself to bring, but if any other committee members have urgent business, let's hear about that now so we can see if we can get that slotted into the agenda. All right, seeing nothing, we'll move on to approval of minutes. Would anybody like to motion to approve the minutes from October 26th?
So moved.
Any seconds? I believe I see a second from Teresa Nielsen. Perfect. Okay. All those in favor, say aye or raise a hand.
Aye.
Do we all vote? I don't remember how this works.
Yes, everybody in attendance can
Okay.
vote.
Then sure.
All opposed? All right, motion carries. So to get us started tonight, we have a couple orders of business sent to us from City Council. The first of which is the review of Black History Month Proclamation as written by Mayor Chaz Jones. Chris, would you be able to put that proclamation up in presenter? And then Chaz, would you be willing to just chat about it a little bit?
Absolutely. Yes, so in our last inclusivity meeting, I think it was October, I brought up the fact that we should be thinking about these things about 3 months in advance. Oh, Chris, you want to jump in?
Oh, sorry, wrong button. Good going.
So he had his hand up, but and I asked the committee if somebody wanted to work with me to draft this. I think we agreed that I would go ahead and draft something, share it with the NAACP, which I did get feedback, which I've received, and then provide that to this committee for comment. So here we are. My intention in drafting this was to basically put something together that everybody would feel good about and would be supportive of. And yeah, just celebrate Black history in Philomath, Black history in Oregon, and just Black history in general, while also recognizing some of the impediments and historic intergenerational traumas that have been imposed upon Black people. So that's that.
Awesome, thank you. And I was curious, when you took this to the NAACP, was there any feedback offered on any changes? Did anything directly come out of that collaboration?
Yeah, so there was no changes. They were happy with it, and they went to Jason Dorsett, the president, and also his Zena, is Carrie his assistant, executive assistant? I think so. Yeah. So I went to them, and then I believe it was also shared with, I'm not gonna get all the titles right, but second vice president, Mr. Christopher Eubanks, I believe. But yeah, but there was no, they said that they were happy with it. They thought it read well, and that they were happy to share it with their membership after it's approved by the city council. I also suggested to them that it'd be great to have them helping to draft these things in the future, and they thought that would be a great idea. So.
And I assume that that is like from a collaborative viewpoint, not a trying to choose my words appropriately. I guess just not taking advantage of Black labor.
No, the idea behind it would be that, and this is kind of off topic, but the idea is that if outside groups that have a vested interest, such as the NAACP, could come to not only Philomath, but also then Corvallis, Lebanon, Albany, and share these types of things. So they put in a little bit of effort and then kind of spread their message around, that might benefit the different organizations, not just the NAACP, but other organizations as well, to help them spread their message and to increase visibility for their specific ideas.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Zena, I see you have a question or comment.
Yeah, I personally find that amazing, but also very disheartening because you didn't even ask a person of color in the room for feedback. And I'm doing all of this work around Black History Month, you know, with other organizations. And I guess I'm like, for me, there's a discomfort even just being in this space because nobody actually really asked me, you know, anything about this stuff. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm coming from.
Yeah, and I just took the direction from this committee, and the decision was that to take this to the NAACP. But we discussed it in the October meeting. I can't remember if you were there or not, but yeah, so that's where we are.
Do any members of this committee have any feedback for this document?
I do.
See, Teresa has her hand up.
In reading it over several times, I would like to, maybe just my own point of view, would like to have seen more positive facts included into this. If you look over the statement itself, it's like a 6-to-3 ratio. Six truths that are difficult and important to understand, but there's only 3 positive notations. And I just feel that there should be more positive inflection in this document rather than, I mean, there's a time and a place, but having the balance or more of a balance or including the positivity of what have been their contributions, I think is equally as important rather than just having that ratio of 6-to-3. I think we fall short a little bit in acknowledging what should be the positive influence and acknowledging that.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. It's definitely a valid viewpoint perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Teresa. I have heard that feedback from another source as well. Thank you for sharing. I see Cindy has a question or comment.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of second what Teresa said. And, I think even maybe doing a little bit more in the statement to call out some of the folks that were living in the community or acknowledge that there were folks living in the community under some of this oppressive legislation and contributing to the community. I really like the section about Reuben Shipley and his contributions to the community. But I think, that like being able to acknowledge that people were, Black people were living in Philomath and contributing to the community and doing work here, and also, resisting this oppressive legislation the entire time. So I would love to see more about contributions or resistance or the community building. And also going back to what Zena said earlier, I would like to add in our discussions at some point, maybe we come up with a procedure as a committee about, if we have something that comes up like a thing to honor Black History Month or Native Heritage Month or Queer History Month or whatever it is, that we check with the committee and see, does anybody want to provide feedback on this or participate in this, and give that option, because that would be really nice, to be able to have folks whose identities are represented be able to, kind of have the option to throw in there.
I think it's a great idea and great, great suggestion for sure.
Yeah, and thank you, Zena, for bringing that up. I really appreciated that.
Yeah, thank you, Zena, and thank you, Cindy. I think moving forward, that is an excellent thing that we can prioritize and do so
I didn't
easily.
hear
And
any of that.
Sorry, what was that, Zena? I wonder if Zena's having some technical difficulties currently. Yes, I agree that that is something that this committee ought to put a stronger priority on moving forward. If we do have stakeholders in the group, allowing space for those people to self-identify and step forward if they would like to and have capacity to, is absolutely something that we should hold space for. I believe Zena had a comment, but until technical issues are resolved, I do see that Councillor Andrade has joined the meeting. Councillor Andrade, will you just quickly introduce yourself briefly for attendance?
I'm Jessica Andrade, City Councilor, and echoing everyone's points. I love them.
Thank you.
John has
Cin-
her hand up. Oh, so does Cindy.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, I was just going to check in really quick. Cindy, do you have a further question or comment, or? was
No,
it
I'm
this?
just sitting here like a goober with my hand in the air.
No worries.
Thank you for checking, Maeve.
Absolutely, no problem. Gianna, did I hear that you have a question or comment?
Yeah, just a really small grammatical thing on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6th sentence. It should be continue to have implications for Black people, not upon.
I'm sorry, I missed all of that. I got kicked off.
Can you let us know where you left off and we can fill in the blanks?
Cindy was saying something.
but it's okay. We can just move forward, but Cindy messaged me later. I'd like to know.
After that, I was just saying hi and seconding what everyone was saying.
Cindy, would you like to just briefly restate what you had said, just so that we can all be on the same page?
Sure. Yes. So after agreeing with what Teresa said about adding in more of Black Philomath residents' contributions and such, I said, going off of what Zena said, I would like to see us as a committee come up with a procedure or like kind of set down a process where if we're working on an identity-based proclamation, that we reach out to the committee members and ask if folks want to work on that proclamation or project or whatever and contribute to it if they have interest in capacity, and that we make that a regular practice. And then, just said, I appreciated Zena bringing that up and talking about that.
Thanks for catching me up.
Maybe you're muted.
Awesome. Thank you. Much appreciated. On the topic of increasing the ratio of positive contribution to harm that has historically and currently continues to be done, how would we like to proceed? Does anybody have a specific statement that they would like to add that we can workshop? We are on a little bit of a timeline as February swiftly approaches. So any changes that we'd like to make, if possible, we should try and get hammered out tonight so that we can send this back to City Council.
Does anyone have any like specific ideas for different positive comments that might be appropriate in the last or after the last three whereases? Or messages of hope or moving forward?
I know it's hard to come up with a both accurate and fully formed thought on this in the moment. And as I said, it would be nice to be able to send a finished document back to City Council so that we can get this out in time for Black History Month.
Looks like Jessica.
However much I would like to spend more time on this, I wonder if we should find whatever, quick things that are important to make sure are in there for this round. And then, similar to the Inclusivity Proclamation, revisit it and annually and refine it to have more of that joy. I was very, I really wanted that as well, but just from the time perspective, I feel like either we have to, like I said, do what I said, or like drop the proclamation completely, because our council meeting is February 4th.
14th.
Okay, thank you, Jessica. Cindy?
I think a simple thing that we could add that might be meaningful is shouting out the NAACP in the area as, you know, supporting this work and this effort, this proclamation for Philomath. I think that's a powerful contribution that might be nice to shout out right in the proclamation.
The other thing, and I thought about including this, but I didn't, because it wasn't necessarily a city thing, but you know, the NAACP came to the city of Philomath and had a barbecue and had a community day. That was something I thought was worth celebrating. But they've also been doing that in other communities, but I think it's great. There was a Portland filmmaker who came and shot a mini series in the Philomath cemetery, focused on Black history this year. That was interesting, but I thought to include these things, but I chose not to, just because I wasn't. Yeah, I wanted something that the council would get behind. I didn't want to do something that I was heavily involved with myself. So, but I would welcome your thoughts on that, Zena or others. Looks like Mike.
Yeah, this isn't necessarily a positive addition, but I wonder if the proclamation might be made a little stronger in regards to where it says the foundations of these past racist policies continue to have implications today, and really sort of strengthening that statement that, you know, today's inequities and injustices are really sort of a legacy of that persistent racist laws and racist policies, and maybe trying to draw a stronger link between today's inequity and past policy. I'm not sure how you would phrase that. I think two statements under the one that is currently highlighted.
I wonder
To me,
if just, oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, to me, when I read this, it sounds like it's phrased a lot of like this all happened in the past, and then there's, you know, this one statement about how it continues to have implications, but that's not elaborated on, or it doesn't seem very strong here, and so this all sort of reads like these are things that all happened in the past, but now everything's okay, and we're going to continue forward.
So maybe under the highlighted section, add one more whereas that says something like, whereas these historical injustices and inequities continue to affect current Oregon citizenry.
I mean, we
like
continue to have redline property. And I know that people believe that historically, you know, only one person was lynched. That's just not even close to being true. So there's this whole other history that I feel like is never going to be shown the justice it deserves.
It's a completely valid point. Thank you, Zena.
With this,
Did we lose connection with Zena?
I don't know, they're muted.
oh no, I'm still here.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Her
Just-
internet's kind of
That's all I
choppy.
had to say.
I think we missed the last part of what you were trying to say. I think that it was choppy signal.
I said that I don't think that this statement is in some ways so lacking, and doesn't do the history the justice it deserves. Again, we have lots of still red line properties, and I was saying that many people from the Black and Indigenous community and communities here were hung, and it's never reported. Terrible crimes are still, they're still not really fully, I think there's not an awareness of that in the frame of our history and what still happens. Just speaking from my experiences as a Black woman growing up here, yeah, so that's what.
So, Deanna,
Yeah, Zena, I'm completely unaware of the redlining that's still happening here or of these other lynchings. Can you let me know where or how I can learn about those?
Read a book, ask a friend, Google it. It's all there. Again, the Oregon pioneers will have more history, but there's a lot of good
I'm sorry, did you?
history out there. I'm sorry, what?
I thought you meant in Philomath.
Yeah, I'm talking about in Philomath. There's a ton of history here that just isn't really talked about or acknowledged still. And so, I mean, yeah.
Okay, I guess I was hoping you could direct me to a specific resource. I guess I also am not.
We have an extensive library. Both Lynn Benton County and OSU has an extensive library, and we have some great historical records at OSU. And just about history, you could reach out against the Black historians. Just Google it. There's so much information that I, again, have had to learn as a person growing up here in a white family. It's out there, and yeah, I'm not gonna like do the research for you, I suppose. You know,
I was
it has to come from your own discovery.
asking.
I'm happy to work on it, but
I'm sorry, I was not asking you to do the work for me. I was hoping you could point me. But I will do that. Thank you.
so if this document lacks to the point where it's not worth presenting as a proclamation, I am, more than welcome to not move forward with it. And the Inclusivity Committee could think about this in the future. I have, I ran it by the NAACP. They seem happy with it, but I have no ownership over this. I want it to be something positive and supportive in the community. So I'm fine to withdraw it. It's no big deal to me.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just be curious to see what, given those thoughts, Zena, what your hope would be for this. Because as Jessica laid out, I don't think we necessarily have the option of completely rewriting something. So just from your personal opinion, would you like to, release this. I know, it obviously could be better. Go ahead and have the city council publish something or not publish anything. Just where are you at in terms of moving forward?
So I think that the thing to remember is these conversations are never going to be over, and
Right.
that we should put it out there, but also be like, this is our beginning of us learning. This is, our first, draft. This is what we've learned. This is what we want to see, as that kind of statement, because we're all finding ourselves. And so I think that to say, yes, this doesn't necessarily show us the whole truth, but I mean, it's a step forward, and we have to take some step. So
Yeah.
sorry, my dog is whining. He wants a yam. Yes, I know it's yam time. If that makes any sense to anyone. Chaz, I think that bringing it to the NAACP, strengthening those connections, is really important. And again, yeah, I hope that in the next few years there are so many people of color from the BIPOC community in these little squares up here. So I think you did good on that for a first step.
Thank you. And one way, if we wanted to balance this with the number of whereases, this is relatively minor, but we could combine whereases so that there's more balance in number, whereas the content wouldn't actually change very much, if at all. I don't know if that would be a solution or if that's just whitewashing something.
Well, I was gonna just say that some of them seem a little bit like they are already something that should be maybe in the same, if it were not a proclamation, like it would be in the same thought or paragraph or something, which I know, that's not how this works, but I think that might be worth looking at. I also don't know how, like, we're not going to get a perfect document tonight, so I don't know how much nitpicking we want to do, but yeah.
I think if I might add my 2 cents in here, I think that, as Zena said, this is a good starting point, and that this document should never be finished, which harkens back to something that Jessica brought up as, like, let's revisit this annually and improve upon this document in the ways that we are unable to tonight. There's no way that a single proclamation like this will ever cover the true scope of the injustices that Black people have faced. And given an infinite number of years, there's no way that we could ever fit all of that into one document of this size and of this type. And so I think if we can take this as a starting place, improving upon it year after year is, I think, our best use of effort. Zena?
I was just going to say, so I'm an ambassador to the MLK Park project, and we're trying to do all of this history again, and it's a whole park project for 12 months, but there's all of this stuff that just can't even be added. There's too much history. There's too much still going on to ever really end this conversation. And so I think that we need to give ourselves credit for starting the conversation and hope that as we grow stronger as a community, the conversations continue and we come to unity. So I guess I'd say everyone should give themselves a pat on the back for putting out something.
Cindy?
We send these kind of documents back to city council. I know, you know, we make feedback on the actual document or give feedback on the actual document. Can we also, are we also able to make suggestions for like, next time you do this, you know, we'd like to suggest, you know, these things. You know, look into the history of this, or, you know, have this ready for us to review by this month or something like that. Like also give some process feedback. I'm not sure if that's within our scope.
Yeah, I think,
Oh, sorry, go
I was gonna
ahead.
say, I think that ideally we would kind of develop that process, as I mentioned in October, that we really need to think about these things 3 months in advance so that we can give it proper attention. But you can see that even if we're not reviewing this 2 months, if we're not reviewing the document 2 months in advance, then there's not a lot of opportunity for change. That's Chris has.
Yeah, Chris.
I was just gonna add, the best way to do it is probably just to give feedback to your members of the city council that are on the committee. I think, you know, you've got an opportunity where you've got 3 city council members, so they're hearing that feedback. I think they're hearing tonight. It would be nice to have had a little bit more time, maybe a couple meetings to review this document, bring some new language back to review as well. So I think that's the best place to do it, and I think that's good feedback, Cindy, for the council to hear, for the city to hear, that we want a little bit more time to review these. I think Mayor Jones is right. We're still kind of getting our feet underneath us and kind of being very reactive as opposed to being more proactive. So as we get a calendar out and can schedule these things a little bit more ahead of time, I think we'll improve that process some. So that's good feedback.
Yeah, that'll be exciting for as we move forward, because I do appreciate this, like Zena said, is a really good start. But it'd be nice, you know, for us to be able to improve upon these things each year and yeah, expand.
So I guess where that leaves us then is if there are no immediate changes necessary, would anybody like to motion to send this as written to city council? Or as
We don't have to
as
motion,
suggested.
we can just consensus it.
Oh, we can. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
just like, does anyone object to the, you know, passing it as is to city council with the correction that Gianna made? So,
Perfect. Then can we get a show of hands for that item?
Hands approved.
in favor?
In favor, I apologize, in favor. That appears to be consensus to me. So we will therefore send this to city council. Thank you very much, everybody. The next item on the agenda is the review of social service agency funding application. And I was hoping that Jessica could talk to us a little bit more about our role in this process.
Yeah, actually, Chris, can you bring up well, I guess, never mind. I can find it. Let's see. Essentially, every year, the social service agencies apply for funding from the city, and the city has like a certain amount that they give out each year, and the agencies have to fill out an application, and that you can see in the packet. And the finance and admin committee decides who gets funding and how much, and like, or to sit, and then that is suggested to council. So not decided, they recommend those numbers and distribution. And then council decides whether or not to accept that recommendation. There's also in the packet, there's a policy of what it currently, what this process currently looks like. And in the agenda item summary is a list of things that council members have brought up in conversations regarding this last round of funding about, well, how are we sure that we're helping those agencies that are in the most need, or that are serving people who have the most need? And there were questions of like board members, how diverse are the board is the board anyway. So our task is to look over the policy and application and make suggestions for the policy there. And I don't know if we're technically supposed to make recommendations for the application, but I feel like that kind of goes hand in hand. So.
Thank you, Jessica. I apologize. I had to step away for just a moment. And so I heard most of it. But how would this committee like to proceed in discussing this item?
It's a big topic.
I see Chris.
Sorry, I was stalling a little bit. I had an ambulance or a fire truck or something going by the window. It's pretty loud. I think what we'd be looking for, again, assuming everybody's had an opportunity to read through this already, would be any specific language changes, so word changes or additions, new language that would be added into the current social service funding policy by way of amendment. Anything that's in there currently that you feel maybe is less appropriate that we would pull out. But I think the focus here would be, reviewing that language in the social service funding policy and making any specific recommendations for amendments to that. And if there aren't any, then I think the report back to the council is that it's been reviewed and feel like it's sufficient as it is. But if there are some changes, then those are the recommendations we want to bring to the city council. I don't know, we need to get too wrapped up in the application itself, because the application is just a reflection of these policies, right? So we can look at the application and tweak the application to make sure we're capturing all the policy statements as needed. We can kind of do that at the staff level and bring that back. But most interesting and most important, I think, is we capture any changes that this body wants to make to the policy itself.
Thank you, Chris. Christopher?
Just as far as the policy goes, and I have not read it, so I apologize for not doing my homework on that. I've looked through the application, but I guess what are the current stipulations for like eligibility? Like, is there anything in there? I just feel like, there's a lot of sort of federal grants and stuff that stipulate things about, oh, I think I'm just getting that fire truck that drove past you, Chris. But anyway, like, are there any stipulations in our current policy about like who's eligible to apply for these programs or receive the funds, that says that they can't discriminate on basis of blah, 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 as just sort of as a floor for what we're considering, just sort of using that language that's in a lot of state and federal grants.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the application does mention that applicants need to be part of a federally recognized 501c nonprofit. And so a lot of those protections for, what we would call protected classes would fall under that designation. It's not a very long application. Chris, are you able to toss that up on the screen for everybody just really quick?
Sure.
Thank you.
The application or the policy?
I'll just share where I'm at. I'm on the policy section, I think, but I can scroll down. So this is the policy itself. I think this is where we're talking some minimum requirements. So youth sports projects or services will benefit from citizens. This is the part talks about they have to be 501c3 tax exempt status. And then here's the actual application requirements. So, I mean, it's kind of bulleted here. And then just a statement that they may be requested. It says may, they actually traditionally have been requested, at least in recent years, to come before the Finance Admin Committee and make a presentation and answer questions. And it's just kind of a blanket statement. So really all you're looking at is kind of right here as far as application requirements.
Yeah, I feel like in terms of a listing of board members, listing the names should be sufficient to, like look up who these people are. Essentially, like I assume that that is the entire purpose of listing the board members, is so that people can know who they are. That would not cover any self-identified or specific demographic information. All it could provide is essentially assumed demographic information based on a picture that somebody can find of X person on Google. So while I think listing of board members is technically sufficient for our specific committee purposes, I wonder if we would be looking at more information, and therefore city council would be looking for more of that specific demographic information. But I'm interested to hear where other people weigh in on that.
I'll just mention that when I was on the board of the Corvallis Environmental Center, and we were applying to a My Memorial Trust Foundation RFP. So in that RFP link, in the request for proposals, it asked for, I think it was just a generic question. Does your board include members of these diverse classes or something like that? And it's just a self-reporting, but I don't know, it gets a little, like, you can't really ask, legally, we couldn't ask our board members if they were a member of those classes. So it was totally just us guessing, but it was also pretty awkward.
This is pretty awkward. Just speaking as the only Black person on this committee, it's pretty awkward.
Yeah, that's sort of where I was getting at with the self-reporting versus looking at a picture of somebody and deciding like, oh, they're white, oh, they're not white. That's, not, I don't think that that is something that this committee or the city council is particularly interested in engaging in, and I would also be really hesitant to include some sort of stipulation that, for example, members of the queer community out themselves, if that is not something that they are interested in publicly doing, just to check boxes on a proposal that has financial ramifications for the board that they serve. I feel like that would be putting people in an unfair position to disclose things that may not be safe in their circumstance to disclose. So I think my gut instinct is to take this listing of board members and, do with it what we will in terms of what information about these people is like publicly available and not necessarily ask too much private information.
Can I just add, Chris, why do we ask for the listing of the board members? Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, I think it's less to do with, the makeup as far as gender and background or nationality or race. I think it's more to do with, are these people that we're familiar with, that we know? Are they names that we recognize? And maybe if you recognize some names on there, you're more comfortable with, giving the money or whatnot. So I think it's really more about the individual and who they are than it is any type of classification, so to speak.
And recognizing conflict of interest.
Well, that's a really good point, Maeve. I think that's a really good one. If you've got the mayor's wife is the board president of a whatever, and the mayor doesn't disclose that, not that, won't get into technicals. I mean, you wouldn't have to withdraw from participating, but definitely would want to disclose that. So no, that's another really good point, is knowing who's on the board could have an implication on how much input a specific city council member should or shouldn't have on the decision-making process. So that's a really good point, man.
I see a slew of hands. I see Teresa, then Cindy, then Christopher.
I'm not sure if this would be possible, but you know how we said applicants shall provide? Could we request that they describe the services rendered to either diverse or underrepresented or marginalized communities within their organization, as far as getting that, or is that too pointed in what we're asking? Because that would let us know we serve, this organization serves these individuals within our community, and give us them a little more insights, but I don't know if that's too personal.
Follow-up question for you, Teresa. Are you sort of looking at the what will funds be used for bullet point and considering adding an additional clause to that, like as it relates to diversity, equity, inclusion, et cetera? Okay.
Correct. It would just be nice to know what the organization, are they focused? Does this organization have a goal to assist with those underrepresented or marginalized populations? In that consider, I don't know if that's appropriate or right or not, but it's just another thought of how we could make sure that those communities are being served by these social service agencies that we're funding.
Thank you, Teresa. That's a great question. Do we have any feedback about that question before?
Could it be that, do they have a DEI statement? Could that be the question?
Christopher, did you have an additional input?
Yeah, I guess my only concern with the DEI statement is then people would just rush a DEI statement out the door, so they'd be eligible to apply for a grant and not actually care. I guess this might be the opposite of what we want to do. So if it is, just tell me to shut up. But you could broaden it a little bit and just be for what will the funds be used for? Just like, I don't know. I come from like the entertainment world. It's like, and what's the like target audience? What's the like sort of who is it targeted towards? So that way we don't specify like, any particular type of demographic or anything. And then they can just tell us from their point of view who it's targeted towards, and then we can use that information how we will. I think that might be a way to kind of go about that without risking sort of any, violations of, civil rights laws or anything. But yeah.
Thanks, Christopher. That's a solid point about rushing the statement. I appreciate that.
I agree. I agree with that as well, Christopher. Thank you.
Cindy?
I wondered first what Christopher said, I think a target purpose for the grants could be providing services to, I think just saying diverse populations, like people can take that in a lot of different ways. But I think that could be a stated funding priority. Not just requested funds shall be used to support projects or services that will benefit Philomath citizens, recognized by a nonprofit. I think there could be something in the priorities that get responded to in the application that emphasizes, equity work or work supporting folks of color or, whatever groups, like whatever things that could be a focus for that year. Like that could be the place where that information gets elicited is, respond to this funding priority and how you're meeting this funding priority, and have a justice-based focus or, equity-based focus there. And I think, oh shoot, I was going to say something about the listing of board members, but I think I forgot. Oh, for the listing of board members, asking about the practices that are being used to diversify the board and its procedures, or, like the work of the organization or whatever. Not asking about specific identities of specific people or, the makeup of the board, but asking about what practices are they using in, finding board members or hiring staff or whatever it is that are lifting up voices of marginalized communities. So those are my two thoughts about that.
Would something along the lines of a listing of board members and board selection processes cover that? Or do you think it needs to be even more specific?
I guess my concern with saying board selection processes is someone might just send us like a copy of their board bylaws that's like, nominations shall be submitted to the chair, and then the committee will vote and blah blah blah, and we'll be like, oh great, okay. It might just be a very sort of technocratic answer instead of a like values-based answer or something. But I might be overthinking that.
Well, I see that, and I think that that's an important point. And wouldn't that also be telling, if that is the only selection processes that they sent out, would that not also be saying something?
I guess I just think it's also difficult sometimes when you're reading these like applications on the other side, it's difficult to know what they're asking for. Like if you don't say, how are you making sure that your board represents the people you serve or something, then they're like, oh, they just want to see like that we're legally compliant with nonprofit rules or something, so we'll
Sure.
submit that. But yeah.
So then maybe like a listing of board members with and your board selection processes with an emphasis on diversity, equity, inclusion, whatever we would want to word that as.
Yeah, I guess something like that, or just like, describe what your board is doing to ensure that its membership is representative of the community or something.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for clarifying. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
I see Cindy, then Zena.
I agree with Christopher. And I think the other thing about stating things outright is it not only asks organizations for, what do we want to see from you this year, but it sets priorities going forward. And for me, like if I'm applying for grants for the organization I work for, if I see a grant, and I think like, oh, I would really like to apply for this grant, and I notice that there's certain priorities, sometimes it makes me consider like, oh, maybe I should be doing some of these things. Like it like the grant language can in a positive way help shape the organizational practices going forward.
Excellent input. Thank you so much, Cindy. I appreciate everybody's input on this. This is firmly not in my wheelhouse. So I see Zena, and then I see Chris.
I think I just was gonna say, like, look at the way that we chose our board members and moving forward what we would like to see. And then I think that, if we're open about what we're about. Um, oh my gosh, my dog is eating a yam so loudly in the background. Then we'll draw other organizations to us. And I also agree with Cindy.
Yeah, thank you, Zena. Chris?
I was just going to provide a little bit of insight. I'll try to be brief, but typically the applications we receive and the social service funding typically come from the same agencies and organizations year after year after year. So, it's uncommon for us to get a lot of new applications that we haven't seen before, because there's a limited number of social service organizations that are in Philomath or do work in Philomath. They know about this funding. They typically apply every year. And a lot of times, it's a staff person or maybe even a volunteer that is taking last year's application, updating the numbers, updating the figures, resubmitting, right? And so, and frankly, the Finance Admin Committee gets used to hearing from the same people, and they hear reports from this year. And a lot of times it's, what have you done different this year from last year? And last year you said you were going to do this, were you able to do it? So there does kind of build a rapport between the council members, the committee members, and the directors or board, board presidents that are presenting. So I just think it's helpful and maybe insightful to know, for this committee to know, because you haven't been through this process, that these are kind of ongoing annual contributions that get made. So like your, Philomath Community Services, Philomath Youth Activities Club, Strengthen Rural Families, just to name a few. These are the types of organizations that come to the city every year, and we're one of many places that they come to get their funding, but they do rely on this funding as well, and so we want to be a little bit careful that whatever we're asking for isn't going to unintentionally exclude somebody from being eligible for these funds if they've come to rely on these funds year after year. So maybe that's just being mindful in how we word this. Maybe it's a matter of putting this out there as maybe requirements that are going to come next year, so they've got some time to work on some of these things. If we're going to kind of have a hard, fast rule of you have to do this or you don't get funding this year, I'm just concerned that some of these agencies, if they don't have some of these requirements in place yet, wouldn't be eligible for funding this year, which may be a hardship on them that we don't necessarily want to inflict on them. So I just want committee to be mindful of those couple of comments.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. I appreciate that insight. And maybe this is just the way that I've been approaching it, but I don't see things that we would add here as being necessarily exclusionary of anyone within limits, of course. But like, there is a reality here that because of our specific small geographic area and its demographics based on a variety of factors, including historic inequity, that the likelihood that we will find a board with anything even approaching majority historically underserved or underrepresented communities is probably not going to happen. And that's probably not something that we would necessarily be looking for. And giving these places an opportunity to say what they are doing, I think helps inform us. And in the next year, if they feel that they need to improve upon that specific area, whether it's based on this application or based on more, I don't know what the right word is, altruistic, perhaps, more, I don't know what word is appropriate to say here, but regardless, like if they want to strengthen their application, that there's the opportunity to do so, and not having like the world's most diverse board wouldn't necessarily be automatically exclusionary. I hope that made sense. Thank you for bearing with me. I see Jessica and Christopher.
Thank you for that, Maeve. I perfectly said. And Chris, thank you for the reminder about the year after year with the agencies. I still think that there still just needs to be changes. I'm sure there are agencies that are going to be popping up here as we're, building out the downtown core and getting more people in the city. And then you have county agencies that, serve Philomath citizens. And I know I went to go see one of the Benton Habitat for Humanity houses here in Philomath. And I asked them, like, by the way, did you know about this funding? And they're like, wait, what? And I was like, yeah, it's an annual thing. And so, like, there are organizations that do help Philomath that don't know about this. So point being, I think there should be a standardized advertising promotion of the applications, like it has to be 1 month in advance, 2 months in advance. Here, and here. Yeah, I don't know.
That does sound like good feedback moving forward. The more applications that come in, the better. Obviously, it's more work and it gives us more opportunity to serve those agencies that are serving Philomath. Christopher?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it short because I'm mostly just going to sort of, cheer on everything that y'all have just said. But I absolutely agree that I think it's important to keep in mind sort of the size of Philomath and the demographics of Philomath. We are a small town. We are a rural community-ish, decreasingly so, but and so that may make it difficult to find boards that are as diverse as boards in other places. But I think that the frame of mind we should have is not that we want to cut off an organization that isn't like that. We want to help encourage them to become that kind of, we're not going to just cut off community services because they don't have enough representation on their board. We're going to be like, hey, it'd be great if you could get more representation on your board. We love your work. We think it's really important. We want to continue to fund it, but we also want to see this change. So I think that's sort of the frame we should approach this from.
I see Cindy.
I think one question related to equity and formation of boards that can maybe slowly be added into this is, are there members of the groups or populations that you serve on your board? It's that idea of, nothing about us without us, that comes out of disability justice movements, I think is a really good question to add in. So for example, if the group is serving seniors, are there any seniors on the board, or is it all, people in their 30s and 40s who don't have that lived experience? So I think that can be another way to encourage equity-based work in organizations, or to be able to allow organizations that are already doing that to highlight it, because there's probably organizations that get funded through this that are already doing a lot of these things, and it'd be nice to know that.
Yeah, here. Thank you very much for that, Cindy. I see you, Chaz. I just have one thing that I want to throw out there. I wonder if at this point, the bullets as listed are perhaps sufficient, and maybe we can add a section that's like ways to strengthen your application so that they aren't viewed as an immediate dismissal of the application. Just something to think about. Chaz?
Just briefly, I know Chris has to leave, I believe any second now. Is that right, Chris?
Yes.
Yeah. So just wanted to recognize that. We shouldn't be surprised if he has to drop off. I think that I'm now I'm a co-host, so we'll stay on. But just wanted to mention that if we have specific additions, I think we could ask folks, even in this bulleted list, they could provide information about X, Y, or Z. Doesn't mean that we're going to use it against them, but at least we have that information. So we could add a section like you just suggested, or we can just kind of mention something. But I do think that we should ask, I think Cindy had a great idea. And if we just tried to figure out how we could incorporate such ideas, we could start to make some progress on that.
If I could real quick, Counselor Andrade, do you have if you've got this up on your screen, you could switch to share, but I do need to stop sharing my screen. The Zoom call or the Zoom meeting will still continue until both the hosts drop off. I've got Counselor Andrade and Counselor Jones both as co-hosts. So the meeting will continue. I just need to stop sharing my screen so I can leave. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah,
Have a good
thank you,
night.
Chris. Real quick, does that include Facebook as well? Will the Facebook recording continue?
It'll continue. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Thanks, Chris.
All right. Perfect. Thank you. Well done. Switch over, folks. I applaud you all.
Sorry.
No.
It was interesting. The mute button totally switched on me. I've never done this before.
Should still be spacebar.
Yeah, it ended up scrolling down. Well, I have a question for Chaz about logistics, because we had this motion at City Council, but there wasn't really much direction to it from what I remember. Are we actually providing like a draft policy, redlining it all, or are we saying we don't like this aspect of the policy, we do like this aspect of the policy, and this is what we want to include, and then give reasons why? And same with like the application, kind of.
Yeah, I think that, as Chris mentioned, the application kind of reflects exactly what's in the policy. So if we put our energy into the policy, then we can trust that staff can edit the application. And if they do that and it's not sufficient, then we can have them correct that. So I would focus in on the policy. But yeah, I think that what we're looking for is specific suggested edits, redline edits. I think that's what's most helpful to the council. If the council doesn't like it, they can revert or modify the edits. But I think the more specific we can be, the better.
Thank you for that. And from what I remember, we don't have a deadline. So like, can like some people take this policy and work on it for our next meeting, try to incorporate stuff, and then we look at that revised draft? Does that sound good to everyone?
We could do that. I think there will be a deadline because of when this needs to go to finance and admin and start to be pushed forward. I don't know what that is, but we should be aware that there most definitely is a deadline in order for us to incorporate this feedback this year.
So I guess the question is, with 10 minutes of the scheduled meeting remaining, do we have time to make the changes that we want to this evening? And do we have time to address this again at the next meeting? I think we need the answers to those two questions before we can know how to proceed this evening.
Then my hand should not be up. I'll just state that it doesn't have to be perfect, right? Just as kind of has been alluded to before, just pushing these things forward, making them better, make them better. I don't feel like we have to be pressured to make it perfect, but I'm okay with it.
I'm sorry, I feel like I've been talking a lot, so if I've been talking too much, let me know. But I guess just for simplicity's sake, from our discussions, it kind of sounds like if we just add a bullet point under the applicants shall provide, just do like a description of any efforts your organization is making to ensure that your board sort of represents the community you serve or something like that. I don't know about the exact language. I feel like that's a sort of simple fix that incorporates a lot of what we've been talking about. Obviously, there's a lot more we could do, but I don't know what, just as a starting point for us to talk about, I'll throw that out there.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think adding a bullet point about ways that these agencies can strengthen their application include, what we've talked about, policies relating to diversity, equity, inclusion, relevant stakeholders having place upon your board. I don't know if there were any other ones, and I don't know. Is anybody feeling like a particularly strong wordsmith this evening?
I'm feeling like a strong wordsmith another day. If we want to work on this later.
I guess do we know when our next meeting would be? Like, could we just come back?
Oh, shoot. I forgot to ask Chris. Chaz, our next meeting is scheduled for the Planning Commission's meeting. So.
It is?
Yeah,
Oh,
the
you mean they're-
22nd.
You mean they're intentionally or no?
I don't know. I just know that all of a sudden I was like, Planning Commission meeting on the 22nd. I think it might be a public hearing of some kind.
Oh, I see. And that was on the 22nd of February. And I was thinking that we had transitioned to bi-monthly meetings. Is that not accurate? Twice every 2 months is not, I'm sorry, once every 2 months?
Not that I'm aware of. I believe that the long break was just due to the fact that the Inclusivity Committee as scheduled would land like either on or right next to major US holidays.
Yeah, I don't have any information about the Planning Commission meeting, but
I will say that it is our fourth Tuesday. So I, in that regard, feel that, I don't know, I would feel a little bit territorial about our space in that if that is not a usual time for the Planning Commission to meet.
And the planning commission's at what time? What time was that meeting? Do you remember, Jessica?
I believe it's 6. But the problem is like if it is a public hearing, you have a certain amount of days that you can.
We need
shift
public
it and-
notice.
yeah.
Yeah, and I think that costs money and not
Okay.
ideal.
So we could either push it a week. Well, I don't know if we'd have to check with Chris in order to figure out what we could do with scheduling. I don't have that information sufficiently at hand.
Can we move this to an email chain potentially?
I think that every time that topic comes up, we decide it's a bad idea.
Because it essentially is like a non-public meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
Could we-
that makes sense.
Could we, if everyone has like, or not everyone, if someone doesn't want to do it, but any ideas that people have, could they like email them to Chris or Jessica or something, and then you can just come back with, sort of like staff comes to council with like your 3 options. If you can come to us with like here's what we could do. And then I just feel like, so we don't spend 3 hours talking about the exact same things we talked about tonight at our next meeting. But yeah.
Sounds great.
I think we're gonna have to do that given the
Yeah,
hour.
I support that.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead and send them to me. I'll ask Ruth for a Microsoft Word.
And actually, we can't send them to you. They have to send them to Chris. the public
Oh,
meeting.
you're right. Because, yeah, thank you for that. That would have been a problem.
Send everything to Chris.
Or okay, and not Chelsea, just Chris, or
Chris and Ruth Post is what I typically do.
okay.
Yeah, to
okay,
city staff. Send it to city staff.
okay.
Cindy.
be able, for this or for other things, to have a small work group meet outside of our regular meeting and then come back to our regular meeting with some suggestions or some wording or something like that that we can talk about? It's so hard to wordsmith things like on the fly in a meeting, and then you get kind of caught up in the language. Sometimes it's easier to like have a small group take those things and put them into a document and then check back with everybody. But I'm not sure how that works with what needs to be public and what doesn't.
But that could be done in making bi-monthly, every other month, bi-monthly meetings for inclusivity, and having that work meeting be in between the months. That could be.
So as long as it's not a quorum, we can have it. I don't think we should do bi-monthly meetings because, as Chaz said earlier, we have a deadline.
Yeah, I think at this point, we are receiving things at a rate from city council that I don't think that we can justify having less frequent meetings. I don't think we'll be able to address those topics as they are sent to us in any kind of timely fashion if we reduce the frequency of our meetings. And I also, don't want that to be like our momentum. I don't want our momentum for this committee to be moving backwards in terms of meeting less often. I think that the idea of bringing essentially homework to Chris and Ruth, sending them our ideas to, amalgamate and then send out is a good way to do that. I know that we have 3 minutes left. We do have 2 to 2.5 additional items that we absolutely at least need to give breath to before we conclude this meeting. So can we get a clear idea of how we want to move forward with this so that we can hit those last 2 items without holding people way too long over?
I would propose that on this topic that we simply make specific suggestions and send to Chris. At least, a week and a half before the next meeting.
Okay. Do we have consensus on that? Show of hands or eyes in favor? All right. That appeared to be consensus from cameras on folk that I saw. The last 2 items, 1, we need a co-chair volunteer for next meeting, which will potentially, but not necessarily, be February 22nd.
There's a raised hand.
I think I see Zena. Are you volunteering for co-chair for February?
Sure.
Amazing. Thank you very, very, very much. We won't have time to talk about these last 2 topics, but I just want to throw them out there to make sure that they're on everyone's radar. 1, there was a suggestion coming from, I believe, a city councilor suggesting an inclusivity calendar of events of sorts, so that we can have an idea of what's coming up. City council knows what's coming up, so they can add, proclamations or suggest action items or whatever within an appropriate timeline for us to address them, as well as serve to notice the public of things that might be coming up. So if people just want to keep that on the back burner, examples would be, Women's History Month is in March. There is Pride Month in June. I think there's Veterans Month in May, I believe, or Armed Services Month is in May, I believe. So things like that. Juneteenth, I would say would be an important one to mark, that kind of stuff. Keep that bumping around so that we can start working on that calendar that will come up in future agendas, most likely as long as the committee supports that action item. Additionally, with Women's History Month coming up, this is another thing to have bumping around in the back of your head. I have a proposal that I can go into more in February, but just so that people have it in their heads. I thought that a good way for this committee to mark Women's History Month would be to bring information, vignettes about influential women in Philomath's history. That could be historical, that could be currently living. Examples that I've thought of is like, maybe we want to look into the contributions of Ethel Clemens. Maybe we want to look into more current but also past members of the Philomath community, like Bev Larson, who was one of the founders of Old Mill Center for Children and Families that serves this area still. Just important contributions that women from Philomath have made so that we can put a more personal bent on celebrating Women's History Month rather than just a blanket statement of like, aren't women great? We contribute so much, et cetera, et cetera. Just something to think about. We don't need to dig into that now. Just wanted to have it on the radar for February.
But if we're going to do it, we're going to have to bring homework to the February meeting because we don't meet in March until the end of March. Remember, we talked about.
That's what I said, though, to have that kicking around in your brain for the February meeting.
But bringing the homework to
for the February meeting.
Gotcha. Okay. I misunderstood.
That's all right.
Bringing a lady to the February meeting.
But we don't need to like, you're just asking for like ideas of people, and so you don't need like a draft proclamation or anything.
Not necessarily. Okay. No, this is just an idea. And like I said, the committee does not even have to move forward with this. This is just something that will likely 99% likely come up in the February meeting. So it's just giving people a heads up that if you want something to contribute and you want this to move forward, bring something to contribute.
Awesome.
And then should we decide how to move forward with the goals and objectives, or just call it a night and wait until next time to plan how to do that?
As much as I would love to move forward with that, I don't see how we could get out of that conversation in any less than half an hour, honestly, because it would involve likely planning some sort of work session or logistical things. And I don't know that we could necessarily do that in the amount of time since we're already over. I know that that's regrettable. I know it's something that we've been working on and we keep pushing it and we keep pushing it, and it is important. And, you know, I don't know what the alternative is, I suppose. If there is no further topic of conversation for this evening, does anybody have anything pressing left before we adjourn?
Since I wasn't here at the beginning, I take it there was approval of minutes, and did you talk about new official committee member?
We did approve the minutes. We did not talk about the committee member.
Okay. Yeah, so we currently only have 6 official committee members because Anissa had to say no. So she has stuff that she has to deal with. We'll miss her, but she will come when she can. So if there's anyone who can commit to coming to these regularly, who's not already an official committee member, it would be great to have you. And if we can't get anyone, we'll have to like talk about it somehow and maybe have the public want to, apply or whatever. So I guess, is anyone interested?
I mean, I already show up to these, but I also feel like there may be other people whose voices might be needed. So I don't want to just like grab that if I don't.
Sorry, so the official committee members don't have any special privileges. It's just in order to make sure we have a quorum. So it's just, and it benefits us to have people who come regularly to be official committee members.
Then yeah, I can do that if that would be helpful, since
Thank you.
Do we need to announce it, make a public announcement and accept applications?
I don't think so, because
Wait. Can the mayor just appoint me because he can appoint people to committees? No? Okay.
No, it needs to go to city council, I
Okay.
believe. Like, I think we would say, hey, we have this volunteer for,
But I mean, can the mayor like recommend me to the city council, or?
well, so what we did with this last one was our committee itself recommended official committee members and the council approved it. So our committee can, by consensus, recommend you to the council to replace Anissa's spot. So,
Yep.
Thank you.
thank you for volunteering, Christopher. Do we have consensus on recommending Christopher to city council this would be to fulfill the remainder of Anissa's term, correct?
How long
Not start a new term?
Well, how long are the terms?
75 years.
Okay, yeah. Count me in.
They are 2 years, and if you need to resign, you get to just resign.
Right,
Like,
okay.
it's not like there's no blood oaths or anything like that, so.
Okay, just checking.
So do we have consensus on recommending Christopher? Just like a job interview, even if you get the job, you can still refuse, but do we have consensus on recommending Christopher to city council to fulfill the remainder of Anissa Teslo Cheek's term? Raise your hand if you say aye. I see 4 hands.
I think you see all of them.
Okay, I can't see everybody all at one time right now, so thank you very much for help on doing that. So seeing consensus, then we can go ahead and recommend.
Cindy, were you going to say something?
I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't want to hold us up, but I don't know if I missed some stuff about Christopher, or, if maybe I should just abstain from this because I've been gone from the last couple meetings. I don't know if there was, information that I was supposed to look over about Christopher, or if we're just like, he looks like a cool guy, come on board. I just wanted to make sure that I'm not missing something I was supposed to do before I'm like, yeah.
No, you didn't miss anything. We asked for a volunteer just now, and
okay.
he just now
okay
sort of said yes. So
thank you. Okay.
I'm coming to the last couple ones, so I figured if I'm going to be here, I might as well do that.
Okay, awesome. So I believe then no further business. Is that correct, Jessica, Chaz, Teresa? Okay, great. So on that note then, I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you everyone for showing up.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
Take
Have a
care.
good
Have a
night.
good evening.
Bye, everyone.
Good night, everybody. Thank you, Mike, for showing up.
Yeah, thanks for letting me participate.
Absolutely, anytime.